So I now want to start focus. I do this anywhere, for example, where we just compiled focus. By just typing focus, I have to have it in the path. And in this case, I want to add a new project. So I open this, focus opens this window, and I choose that I want to create a new project. Now I need to localize the source directory for this project. And this is not on the camera computer, which would be a slow remote drive. This must be on the local drive on your local RAID system, a fast and large hard drive where you have lots of terabytes available. So I do this now on this data, proteins, and then ABC work. So I do it here. It's an empty folder, which I just created. And here I want to initialize the default configuration files from the master. If you have a similar project, you could copy it from somewhere else. And I call this here ABC work or something. Yeah. So this is just for test purposes. And this is a single particle project. We have different modes. At the moment, this is a single particle project where we recorded movies of single particles. Focus will start, and this is a fast thing. And focus then starts with this library view. So top right is the settings parameters. If I open this, you see the settings window, and here you could configure focus. General things are usually fine as they are. The microscope we have, you could say my microscope is a 300 kilovolt machine, and if it's a Titan, then the CS is 2.7, and we do not have a faceplate. Oh, by the way, focus immediately saves all values that you type in, so you would always delete a field and then type from scratch. Focus is not good in entering a character somewhere in the middle, because the cursor always jumps to the end of it. So you just delete a field and type it again. So the system has a scratch disk, which we can put in somewhere. If you, oh no, I leave the scratch disk at the moment. Scratch disk location just where is a dot. So scratch disk should be local where we are, but the fast scratch disk is on this SSD drive, and in this machine that's called mount cache. That's the SSD, which is very nicely fast. We have 2 GPUs in this computer, and I want to use both of them always in parallel and together and not cycle over them. In the software tab, we can install all kinds of softwares that Focus will use. So there's Unblur and Motion Core 2, for example, and GCTF and CTF Find, and so. And if you move the mouse over any of these, it would show you what you need to have there. For example, for CTF Find, we need the path to find the executable. Yeah, and if these are red, then you have to do something about this. If these are black, then it's fine. Eman and imod directory, I think they require the path in which you have the bin directory, like eman path for the eman installation directory. Yeah, and so for each of them is a different situation that is described here. Okay, status. We maintain a website, and Focus pushes results to the website, and there's 2 ways to initialize the website. I will explain this later. The viewers are the programs or the scripts or so that are used when you double-click a result. So if you double-click on the PDF file, then on my machine it will use evins, or if you double-click on a PostScript file, then GV, Ghost Script Viewer, will be GV will be used, or Firefox for Safari pages or something, for HTML pages, Chimera for volumes. and then the font is just the default system font. So that is what we have here in the settings tab, top right. Top left is the project tab, which you also usually don't need to go into, but just here for completeness. In this project tab, you can rename the entire project. At the moment we call this ABC Work. The project mode at the moment is SingleParticle, but if you want to switch over to tomography or 2D crystals or something, you can do it here. You can search for parameters, and then for the system-wide or project-wide parameters that have a globus here in front of them, you can change and reach them here, but I will speak about parameters later. You have some other things, but so the main library is where everything will happen, and at the moment we deal with importing data into Focus. For importing data, you have this window here, where on the top left you have to identify your camera computer, which usually is an NFS mount to a different computer, digital micrograph for example. But for this project demonstration, as I said before, we do this locally, and we say we have here a 0EM computer, and I just go to the 0EM basic directory, and in there we have this raw folder, for example here, where all the TIFF files are. If you would have a CCD camera that has only movies, you could have them in some subfolder called images, or if you have already drift corrected data, you can have them in a subfolder called aligned. But in this case, only the raw folder had data which were found here, as shown on the right here with these check marks, and it found all kinds of movies. So these movies are all dark subtracted. They are not yet gain corrected. Those are TIFF files. They are only dark subtracted, and I have to tell Focus where the gain reference is that should be applied to these. And the gain reference in this case is in the same folder as this thing here. That's this large floating point value DM4 format file, and I define it here. And the movies will all be imported in a subfolder called auto, and that's it. The file names here have this pattern. They're called abcg2fab underscore and then the date and the time. That is all we have in the file names here, and I can use this for Focus to understand this by saying the separator here is an underscore. I type an underscore here, and then what we have is a specimen name, and then the day. That was wrong. This big mouse pointer is a bit difficult to point. A day and the time. So this is all we have at the moment. And by defining here name, day and time, after import, Focus will understand these two things. This becomes interesting when you can find the tilt angle from a tomography data collection session in the file name. Then this is a good way to have Focus learn the tilt angle. So we want to continuously import new images and delete them on the camera computer. So you would delete them and continuously import, but maybe not right now because I'm still setting this up. So what should happen after importing them? Yeah. So usually after importing them, we want to apply the gain reference and unpack the TIFF file, apply the gain reference, and calculate the first average of the movie and the Fourier transform of this average for display purposes. And this is happening in the source script. We can update the microscope statistic files, which is just the average of all. This is a script that calculates the average of all images from the whole session, and this may show you if you have anisotropic magnification or if you have some gain reference problem, because the average then will show, as Marine van Heel discovered, will show very nicely how your gain referencing and flat filtering is performing. After that, we want usually to apply motion core 2 to do drift correction, and then run GCTF on the drift corrected movies, or CTF find 4. We can measure the iciness. We push status data to the website, and then we can clean the scratch disk if you want to. And we can also go and pick particles with G-Auto-Match. That would be there, and that's usually all we need to do at this time. So this would set scripts that are all now listed here, and they would happen after importing. So Focus will import the movies, delete them on the K2 computer, and then run these scripts on them. You could have scripts run while importing, and this only makes sense for one single purpose, which is when you run in tomography and you want to have a script that imports in the Hagen scheme movies that are all from the same sample, same poor bacteria in tomography or so, but at different tilt angles, and then each script needs to learn the current electron dose on the sample and has to learn also the prior electron dose on the sample from the previous movies on this sample in this tilt series. And for this has to be done in sequence, so you would want to run one certain script in sequence while importing, whereas everything else can do after importing. And after importing means these scripts will just be pumped into the batch queue manager, where they run then in parallel later whenever the computer gets to it. So after import is what you usually want. That's the faster way. And everything that is imported is prioritized in the batch queue, which means it's processed first, because you want to see the most recently recorded movie from your Titan Cryos first, because you want to know if there is a drift problem or the beam is black or something in your microscope. You want to know this as soon as possible, and not only when the batch queue is finished. So in case your microscope is faster than your computer, then the batch queue will fill up, and nevertheless you want to get the result as soon as possible. So this is why we usually prioritize imported movies. So our library is still empty, and at the moment I will just start this, and it now starts importing one movie, and then the second one, and the third, and then I stop it again, because I don't want to run further. So we only have a few here. And these first few, they were not deleted from the camera computer because we didn't say so here, top left. So which is why they have a check mark. So this is a way to have your hard drive on your digital micrograph computer run over. But if you don't want this, then you just delete them over there. And if you click this continuously import, then Focus would sit there and wait, and in case EPU or digital micrograph records a new movie, Focus would go move it over after 180-second waiting time here, number of seconds to wait, feed it into the batch queue with all these scripts, and delete it on the K2 computer or EPU computer to keep that hard drive free. So far we have imported 6 movies. The 6 movies have arrived in the library, so they are here. Each line is one movie. So far nothing has been run yet. These were just here. All these parameters are dummy parameters or default parameters. They are not yet making any sense. You have different things that you can look at. For example, the specimen number, we don't want to see that. We can unclick it here.